Thank you very much. I'll try and steer clear of that devil's vortex, I think, as well, that Mike just mentioned. It doesn't sound very nice. The Leyland graphite deposit. So we'll go through that today. I'll tell you what we're doing with the project there and where we're heading in the future. This is just a bit of a snapshot of what I'll talk about in the next 15 minutes or so. We've got a large deposit of graphite in the Northern Territory. It's in a fantastic location. We've done some metallurgical test work which shows we can get a commercial grade concentrate out of it. We've done a fair bit of drilling recently. We've got an indicated resource and we're about to embark on a scoping study in the next half of this year. And we've also got a cornerstone investor in Quinbrook Infrastructure Partners as well, which I'll go through in more details later on in the talk. But just a bit of a look at where we are. Like I mentioned, we're in the Northern Territory. We're a couple of hours drive south of Darwin in the Pine Creek area. Pine Creek is an historic gold mining area. There's lots of infrastructure there which supports mining and a supportive community as well. We're close to the Port of Darwin for access to export of any potential product there. And we're also close to Darwin as well for the Middle Arm Development Precinct as well going forward. Now there's the infrastructure in more detail there. You can see we're about 40 kilometres outside of Pine Creek. There's existing gas pipelines, high voltage power lines, sealed highways, railway lines and the like there as well. We've got a gazetted road which goes right through the deposit, so we've got no issue of access there as well. And like I mentioned before, it's a gold mining community, so there's lots of support, local support for mining in the area. So it's probably, you can't stress it enough, is the importance of the location of the project in the NT and very close to Darwin. There's the deposit there in a bit more detail and some of the drilling results we've done. Kingsland only listed in 2022, just under 3 years ago. We announced the discovery of this project about 2 years ago, and since we've embarked on this drilling program to prove up some inferred and indicated resources. And you can see some of the drill hits there. These hits are sort of world-class hits in terms of grade and width. You can see some of the highlights here in green there, 200 plus metres at up to 10% TGC, which is total graphitic carbon. It's a continuous ore body. It's got a long strike length with considerable upside on our existing published resource. And I suppose to note there is that little purple box there, which is the purple box there, which is the area of our indicated resource in our scoping study going forward. So there's our latest resource. We released this about 3 weeks ago. We converted some of the inferred resource up into indicated. We only targeted a very small area of the resource, about 600 metre strike length, to upgrade to indicated, and that'll form the basis for our scoping study going forward. You can see there 192.5 million tonnes at 7.3%. That makes us a significant deposit on the global scale and Australia's largest graphite deposit by a fair margin as well. We've only targeted that little small area there. We're conserving cash as much as we can. That small area of resource there, with based on an indicated resource of 12 million tonnes, will provide us with sufficient tonnage for a scoping study in excess of 10 years. Cross-section of the deposit, again, this is one of the more favourable characteristics of the deposit is it outcrops on surface. It's up to 150 metres wide in places. It's sub-vertical. It's obviously very amenable for cost-effective open-cut mining techniques with very, very low strip ratio. We can highlight some high-grade areas. Our recent closest space drilling did show that there are areas of 10% plus grade there, which we can highlight in our upcoming mining studies and mining scheduling as well to provide the best product to the proposed plant as soon as we can. The geology of the deposit there, just the highlight there of what it is, it's the contact zone between carbonaceous sediments and an intruding granite, and the heat and pressure from the granite has cooked up the carbon in the sediments into graphite. So you've got this nice little zone of graphitic schists up to 150 metres wide with a strike length of around 20 kilometres on that zone there. So you can see it continues right, oh, wrong one. It continues, there we go, hang on. That one there. It continues from down here, and that's where we're doing our scoping study here, right up towards here. We've only drilled these blue areas here. That's the inferred resource, and there's a bit of indicated in here now as well. So you can see we've targeted about 4 kilometres of the strike length for the drilling to date. There's about 20 kilometres in total. So the resource there of 192.5 million tonnes is only a very, very small part of the potential there. And the exploration target there, you can see, is up to 1.1 billion tonnes of contained graphitic schist that we estimate grades between 7 and 8%. So you can see there's significant upside here for a sizable deposit which will support an extremely long mine life. into the future. Metallurgical test work. The geology is probably the easier part in this deposit. As you've seen, it's continuous, long strike length, simple geology with very good characteristics for open cut mining. The metallurgical test work, again, we're in the process of doing that. So far, we've produced a concentrate. It's fairly standard flotation techniques to float the graphite flakes. We've got a concentrate of around 94% grade, which is what we're calling our commercial grade. We can sell that to people who want that sort of graphite. It's a fine flake graphite. At this stage, we've only explored a small part of it, as I've just said, but at this stage, it's fine flake. We haven't seen any jumbo or coarse flakes, although we haven't explored 3/4 of the deposit. So there still is potential for that sort of coarser flake, but we're focusing now on the finer flake, which is more amenable to the end use for batteries, is what we're targeting. So our final processing plan here is a mine and a concentrator on site at near Pine Creek. We'll produce a graphite concentrate of around 94%, and we'll transport that up to Darwin. And we're working with our major shareholder, which I'll go through in detail in a few more slides. And the plan is they will construct a downstream processing facility in Darwin, and they'll produce purified spherical graphite in Darwin for future use, for further use into battery anode material. I should mention too, we've done the test work here in Perth to produce the concentrate. We sent a bulk concentrate sample off to Germany for further testing, and that's being done at the moment. And in the next 2 or 3 months, we'll assess the viability of producing that purified spherical graphite, and that'll sort of lead into our scoping study. So just a few words on the graphite market. I think a lot of this has been gone through in previous slides as well with other commodities, but graphite's much the same. The main use for graphite traditionally has been industrial usages, but going forward now the increasing uses for EV batteries and also for battery energy storage systems, storage batteries associated with your home solar or the larger plants which are being built in places like Collie and things like that. It's important to note too that a lot of the talk on critical minerals and battery minerals is all about the lithium, cobalt, and nickel, but without graphite there's no battery. So graphite makes up the largest proportion of the battery by weight. It's an important component of it. Like I said, no graphite, no battery. So the graphite market is very important to the ongoing manufacturing of EV batteries and storage batteries. And there's just a slide there of the two uses, battery and industrial, and the proportion of the end product of graphite going into the battery market going forward. You can see that it'll be increasingly used for batteries going forward, and that obviously means increased demand going forward as well for graphite. So that's what the graphite's going to be used for, basically batteries and EVs. Where does it come? Well, hang on, that slide there. Again, that's the large storage batteries, and again, Quinbrook is our major shareholder. I'll mention them in a couple of slides, but they're also building these very large storage facility batteries around Australia. They've got plans there for some big ones in Queensland. These batteries are planned to have a 8-hour life for battery decharging at night time. Those batteries, which I think one of the talks previously mentioned, are increasingly important now as part of the energy mix. They use a lot of graphite as well, so there's an increasing demand there for graphite for these large batteries to support renewable energy sources. So where does battery come from? At this stage, obviously China is the major supplier of flake graphite, the major miner of flake graphite, but more importantly, they're also the major supplier of refined graphite products, which is essentially a spherical purified graphite and your active anode material, which goes into your battery. So it's really dominated by one market at the moment, and we've all seen the recent geopolitical considerations with a lot of sort of resource nationalism raising its head and things like that. I think there will be a real push to diversify away from single market commodities like graphite is, and I think where we are in Darwin, we're very well placed to take advantage of that going forward. Now, Quinbrook, late last year, Quinbrook invested in Kingsland. They took a 15% stake and invested about $2.5 million. Quinbrook is a fund who invests in renewable energy projects. They've built some of the largest solar farms in the USA and the UK. They've also got plans for building a very large solar farm in central Northern Territory, which will supply power to the Sun Cable, which you may have heard of. Quinbrook is doing stage 1 of the Sun Cable, which will provide renewable energy from central NT up to Darwin to supply power for Darwin industrial growth, of which we'll be a part of. And the second stage of the Sun Cable is to supply power from Darwin through to Southeast Asia and into Singapore as well. So that goes within about 15 kilometres of our project site. We've signed offtake agreements with Crinbrook for our graphite. They're planning to construct a downstream processing facility in Darwin to produce purified spherical graphite. So we've got a deal with them, a binding deal, that if we can prove the viability of our project to produce flat graphite, they will take it and they will produce spherical graphite in Darwin. So it's a nice domestic downstream processing facility being built up there. We've also signed a deal we've also signed a deal with Crinbrook for them to supply renewable energy as well from the sun cable going forward. So that's also a very important consideration in reducing costs for the project, power costs, and also for reducing any sort of carbon intensity use as well on producing the flat graphite. So that's just what I've just mentioned there, I suppose, with the sun cable stuff with Crinbrook. They're a supportive partner. They've invested in several of these sort of projects around Australia and the UK. They're moving more into the upstream part now, and that's securing supply of some of the raw products, of which we're one. Just a word on the flat graphite price. It's probably similar to most of these battery commodities. Lithium's the same, nickel's a bit the same as well. We're at all-time lows at the moment with the graphite price. I think we're at the right time of the cycle with what we're doing. We've just discovered this project. We're developing it right now. And I think by the time we're ready to develop it in a few years' time, I think the price would have changed because the demand for graphite would have grown a fair bit more. So just a bit of a tick-the-box exercise of what we've done and what we're going to do in the future. We discovered this project about 2 years ago. Since then, we've drilled out a considerable resource. We've got one of Australia's largest graphite resource, one of the largest ones in the world. We've just recently released an indicator resource, which will form the basis for a scoping study on the project. We've done metallurgical test work, which shows that we can produce a marketable concentrate of around 94% grade, which is important. We're doing a test work at the moment to produce spherical purified graphite, and we'll have those results back in the next 2 or 3 months. And that'll, like I just said, form the basis for a scoping study, which we hope to release later this year, probably the December quarter. We'll take probably a fairly, like I showed before with the slide on the indicator resource, we've taken a very small bite size out of the entire project. We'll prove the viability of that, and once we can display that you can produce a viable product here to sell, excuse me, to a refinery in Darwin, we will upscale the project then and do more drilling, do a lot more metallurgical test work, and move into a feasibility study over the coming year or two. So just to highlight and to summarise what we've talked about there, we've got a globally significant graphite deposit near Darwin, easy access to markets in Southeast Asia and the wider Asia. We've got a large deposit, a lot of scale, considerable upside there, and we've also got a very important partnership and a larger cornerstone shareholder with Crinbrook Infrastructure Partners, who will help us develop the project, but also will buy our product and make spherical graphite in Darwin as well with the downstream processing. There's the board there, snapshot there. I think one of the most important things to look at this is the enterprise value of the project. It's only $6.4 million. I think the graphite market is subdued now. Investor interest in graphite is a little bit subdued as well. I think it's a very good opportunity to come in at the ground level with this project, given the scale and location, and come up with us, take the ride with us to grow this project. That's